This is the Sony STR-DH 7.2-ch surround sound home theater AV receiver, and I've been living with it long enough to have real opinions about what it does well and where it cuts corners. I bought it for one main reason. I wanted Dolby Atmos on a budget without turning my setup into a mess of cables and features I don't use. I came from an older receiver with no Atmos or 4K HDR, so I was aiming for a clean upgrade that still kept things simple. I did have doubts before I bought it. No Wi-Fi, no Ethernet, spring clip speaker terminals for most channels, and no HDMI 2.1 for high frame rate gaming. But the promise of true Atmos decoding and solid 4K HDR pass-through at this price pushed me to try it. On the outside, it's slimmer than a lot of receivers I've owned. The height is about 5.225 inches, which genuinely helped it slide into my media cabinet with some breathing room for airflow. The look is low-key and clean, basically a black box that doesn't call attention to itself. I like that on the front you get a normal 1/4-inch headphone jack and a straightforward display that you can read across the room. The remote is where the budget shows. It works fine and the layout is clear, but it feels light and plasticky. On the back you see exactly what this product is about. 4 HDMI inputs and 1 HDMI output with ARC and eARC, 2 subwoofer pre-outs, 1 optical and 1 coaxial digital input, and a few analog RCA inputs. There's a USB port, but it's power only, not for media playback. No Ethernet jack, no Wi-Fi antennas, no phono input for a turntable, and the FM tuner doesn't have AM. The speaker connections say a lot about the cost-saving choices. The front, left, and right have proper binding posts, so banana plugs are easy. The rest, center, surrounds, and height channels, use spring clips. My 14-gauge wire barely fits those clips, and it's not fun if you're reaching into a tight space. Also important, this receiver is rated for 6 to 16 ohm speakers. If you're running 4 ohm speakers, this isn't for you. From my experience, setup is fast and beginner-friendly. I ran the Easy Setup Wizard and Sony's DC-AC auto-calibration with the included mic. The whole thing took maybe half a minute. It detected my 512 layout right away, which is 5 speakers around the room, a sub, and 2 height channels for Atmos. I've tried it both with in-ceiling speakers and with up-firing modules that bounce sound off the ceiling. Both worked, but true overhead speakers felt more convincing. After calibration, I watched a few Atmos titles, and the height effects were instantly noticeable. Rain above, aircraft moving overhead, and that bubble of sound that Atmos is known for. That said, the automatic settings weren't perfect. The subwoofer distance and level were off by a pretty big margin, and the bass ran hot for my taste. I adjusted the sub down several decibels and corrected the distances manually, and the sound snapped into place. If you're new to this, that simply means going into the menu to make the sub level lower and changing the distances to match where your speakers actually are. Day to day, the video path has been reliable. It passes 4K at 60 Hz with full color, 444, and supports HDR10, HLG, and Dolby Vision. I run a streaming box and a UHD Blu-ray player into the receiver, and then out to the TV, and I haven't seen any color banding, handshake glitches, or unexpected dropouts. eARC has been a real help with TV apps. I can watch Netflix or Disney Plus on the TV and send Dolby Atmos audio back to the receiver over the same HDMI cable. For gaming, here's the reality. This is HDMI 2.0 territory, not HDMI 2.1. If you want 4K at 120 Hz or variable refresh rate with a PS5 or Xbox Series X, you'll route the console to the TV for video and send audio back to the receiver via eARC. That's exactly how I run my PS5. It's an extra setup step, but it works. On the audio side, power has been totally fine in my medium-sized living room. Sony prints 145 dOD per channel in the spec sheet, but those marketing numbers are based on a single channel at a specific frequency and a generous distortion limit. The more realistic rating is 90 watts per channel, with 2 channels at full frequency range into 6 ohms, which is roughly the mid-60s if you're running typical 8 ohm speakers. In real terms, it gets loud without strain with reasonably sensitive speakers. Dialogue is crisp, effects have good separation, and music sounds clean. Noise floor is low. I don't hear hiss at idle. The up mixers, Dolby Surround and DTS Neural X, do a nice job taking non-Atmos content and spreading it around, including the height speakers, so even older Blu-rays and regular streaming shows feel bigger. High-resolution audio over HDMI works, including DSD, but keep in mind there's no network streaming or media USB, so you need a player to feed those formats. Bluetooth is basic but solid, with AAC support that sounds good with my iPhone. Bluetooth standby is handy. I can wake the receiver by connecting from my phone and start music without hunting for the remote. The user interface is where you feel the age and the price point. The on-screen menu is simple text overlaid on the video. It's not pretty, and some deeper settings are only on the unit's front panel, which is clunky to navigate. Once you learn where things live, it's fine, but it feels old school compared to the polished menus you get on pricier receivers. I don't mind it, but I wish the upmixers and sound fields were easier to toggle with bigger on-screen prompts. At least the labels explain what each mode does, which helps if you're new to this. For ventilation, that slim chassis does get warm, so I leave space above it, and it's been stable. Key features that matter to me are Dolby Atmos and DTS:X decoding, reliable 4K HDR pass-through, eARC support, a true 7.2 layout with dual sub-outputs, and a compact chassis that actually fits standard furniture. In my opinion, that's the core you need if your goal is cinematic sound with modern video formats on a budget. It's perfect for a 5.1.2 setup in a small or medium room where you want clarity, headroom, and immersive height effects without paying for Wi-Fi features or room-by-room streaming that you might never use. I also like that it's quiet at idle, and that AAC Bluetooth sounds better than the basic SBC codec you often get at this price. The HDMI side has been set and forget for my streaming and disc playback, and eARC has made TV app audio very straightforward. There are trade-offs. The spring clip speaker terminals on the non-front channels are my least favorite thing here. Thick cable doesn't play nicely with tiny clip openings, and you can't use banana plugs for most channels. The lack of Wi-Fi or Ethernet means no built-in streaming, no AirPlay, no Chromecast, no Spotify Connect, and no over-the-network updates. The USB port won't play files. It only provides power. 4 HDMI inputs may be tight if you have lots of sources. The receiver also doesn't support 4-ohm speakers, which limits your speaker choices. And for gaming enthusiasts aiming for 4K at 120Hz with VRR, you'll need to wire consoles directly to the TV and rely on eARC for audio. None of that breaks the deal for me, but it's good to know before you buy. From my experience, once I dialed in the manual tweaks, sub-level down, distances corrected, the sound locked in and stayed consistent. Movies have punch and impact without muddy bass, and Atmos height moments are convincing enough that I sometimes look up. Music playback is honest and clean in pure direct or with processing off, and Bluetooth for casual listening has been stable. Power hasn't been an issue with my 8-ohm bookshelf speakers and a center channel, and the dual sub-outputs let me balance bass across the room more evenly. I'd recommend this for anyone who wants an affordable path to Atmos and 4K HDR with eARC, values clean sound over networking extras, and has a room that doesn't need stadium-level power. If you're a serious gamer chasing 4K 120 with VRR, or you run 4-ohm speakers, I'd point you elsewhere. If you're hoping to stream music without a separate device, this won't do that. If you're okay using a streaming stick, a Blu-ray player, or your TV's apps, this receiver does its core job very well. In conclusion, the Sony STR-DH790 nails the fundamentals that matter for movie nights. It decodes modern immersive formats, switches 4K HDR without drama, and powers a 5.1.2 system confidently in a compact box. The price you pay is less about dollars and more about living without network features, accepting old-school menus, and dealing with spring clips on most channels. In my opinion, the trade is worth it if your focus is cinema sound on a realistic budget. It's perfect for a straightforward home theater where the priority is hearing the mix as the filmmaker intended without overcomplicating your rack. If this video helped, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments what receiver you're using now and whether you'd upgrade to the STR-DH790 or hold out for HDMI 2.1. Thank you for watching.